Hello and welcome to today's webinar titled Modern Media Management for Schools. I'm Andrew Sculthorpe, and together with my colleague Brad Entwistle we're going to inform you, educate you I hope, all about the wonders of media management and certain issues when they happen. Today's goal is, as I said, modern media management for schools and how real-world crisis media management has changed, how you can be prepared for the day everything goes wrong.
And that was going to be my title for this seminar, but I was rolled. I wanted to call it What to Do When Everything Goes Wrong, but modern media management prevailed.
Hello again, it's Andrew here. Now, the gentleman with the glasses on you can see is Brad Entwistle. He's been in this industry for more years than you care to mention. I think we're looking at 30 now. I've been working with schools for donkey's years and is a master in this area. So hopefully you'll find him incredibly interesting to listen to. The follically challenged gentleman in the middle, that's me, Andrew Sculthorpe. In my past, I've worked over in the UK on Fleet Street, in fact, when there actually were newspapers on Fleet Street. Yes, that's how old I am. And I've worked over here with Seven West Media, with News Limited, and a whole heap of other media organisations. And John Lacroix, the other gentleman, is former News and Current Affairs Director for Channel 7 and an absolute legend in the field of media management, crisis media management. So
John would have been with us today, but he's on government service, secret squirrel stuff.
In Canberra, yep. So Image 7 is a marketing communications firm. We've got representation in Perth, Adelaide, Sydney, Brisbane, and over in Ireland, where we service a number of clients even in the UK. We've been dealing with schools for, gosh, 24 years now, so we've got plenty of experience, and we've got a team of 23 people. The service hub, that's here in Perth, and we like to think we're globally recognised. Certainly we've got clients scattered throughout the world and have been guest speakers in the United States and all over. So, so sit down, relax, and we'll try and tell you all about media crisis management.
Well, everybody thinks that a media crisis isn't going to happen to them. I have yet to meet a school who, when there isn't one on, have sat down and said to me, I just want to plan to be prepared for the next media crisis. Nobody thinks it's going to happen to them until it does, and it will. That's the unfortunate thing. It's the dynamics of schools. You've got lots of students, lots of people doing lots of things, and something is going to happen sooner or later. Today is a really big topic, and just before coming to air, Scully and I were talking about how much we've got to get through, so forgive us if we feel like we're going at a gallop pace, but we are. So we're going to talk about what to do, how to do it, and what you can do right now to be prepared. So that's probably the most important parts of today. But just let's view this problem. Usually when a crisis has happened, that's when we get the call, and something has happened. There's been an event, a change in circumstances, or a bit of new news, and something has happened. The media has called you, you're not sure how to respond, and all of a sudden both you and your head are under extreme pressure. So how do the media feel about this themselves? Let's step into it. Well, we're not going to walk a mile in their shoes. We'll probably take just a few steps in their shoes. They're under the pump. They're being asked to do more than they've ever had to do before with less people and to create more content. So that they are under the pump. News is a lot different now than it was even a decade ago. It is full-on 24/7 for all parts of the news industry, not just 24-hour rolling news on CNN. Everybody has got the 24/7 button pushed. But remember that they're usually well-meaning people doing their job. But yes, there are a few horrible people in the media who will try and take you out from the jugular at the first opportunity, but they're not actually that common. Most of them are really just trying to do their job. Most importantly of all, just realise they don't care about you and your school.
Don't flatter yourself.
They don't care at all. They only care about their audience, and their audience are their readers, their website visitors, their listeners, or the viewers on TV.
And that audience is what you're mostly interested in. Don't forget that, your own audience. Now the triggers. So what's happened for us to be even called, or for you to be beginning to panic? Normally there's a whole range of things. It could be an event or an accident, heaven forbid. Extraordinary things happen. Crime being committed. Sadly, that happens all too often as well. A moral failure, breach of trust. And we're all aware of some of the tragic sex cases that have been involved from various different schools or at various organisations, or even an accusation of any of the above. And they're enough to send shivers down the spine of any principal or any marketing communications professional, to be honest. And how do you deal with those?
Your reputation takes years and years and years to build. In fact, some schools who are joining us right here today have got reputations that span back 120 years and more. And yet, in today's communication landscape, that reputation can be lost in seconds. So before you lose your reputation in seconds, before it all goes bad, what do you need to do? What are the things that you can do to be prepared? Well, number one is to have a plan. But let's realise here, you're not, Harvard University or Yale or something like that. It's got to be proportionate. It's got to be real. You're not going to fill a lever arch file as I've got there with your plan. So most importantly, you and your other managers need to know what it says and where to find it. All too often a crisis does happen and all of a sudden everybody's running around going, we did have a media plan here somewhere and it's gone. Know where it is, get it clearly marked. I like to have it physically on a shelf, quite simply because the last thing people want to do in the middle of a panic crisis is be trawling through folders of policy statements on your computer trying to find it. Make it easy so you can pull it out and grab it straight away. It should identify who is your spokesperson. Most schools, the spokesperson will be the school head. Sometimes there's provision in the rules for it to be the chair of council or the chair of the board of governance. Often that is a stipulation that is made in the condition of employment, or it is in a board policy. So this is not something to take lightly. Work out who it is and then actually denote it. For the person who is the spokesperson, it's a 24/7 role. They can't get out of it. It doesn't stop when they go home for the weekend. It doesn't stop on the school holidays, and they need to be aware of that. Do they need media training? This is a really good time to ask. If they've never actually had any experience with the media before, never been put under some pressure, or have a feeling for how the media works, media training is a good thing. Also, think about including the acting head, usually the deputy, but when the head is away, say they're sick or they're off a professional development conference or something like that, then the spokesperson mantle automatically passes to the acting head. So they should be brought into this loop as well. Rule number one, only the spokesperson speaks. It sounds a little bit obvious, but the temptation for people to speak when a journalist could be just standing at the school gate and saying, oh, I just want to ask you a couple of questions.
This is so important because journalists love to get a third party speaking, and suddenly there's a quote from the school. Heaven forbid, where did that come from? You may never even track it down, but once it's out there, it's out there. So you need to communicate that, not only agree in your committee, but communicate it to the rest of the school.
Agree on the message in your messaging, in your media plan. Now, you haven't got the crisis yet. We're still planning. So how can you write your message? Well, you can write the generic messages about your school, and you can even write generic messages to cover most of the situations that you could foresee that could become a crisis. They're great starting points and give you a whole bunch of comfort level. In your media plan, think about who has decision rights about the message. In other words, who is the person who makes the decisions about what actually gets said. Again, usually the principal, sometimes chairman on the board of governance. Who has decision rights on the management, actually how you progress things forward, how you deal with the media? That often is delegated to Director of Marketing Communications or a similar type role. Sometimes also assumed by the principal, but our experience would be try and get 2 people around it if you can. It shares the load in a high pressure situation. Ensure complete trust. These 2 people, the person managing it and the person who is the spokesperson, have to have utter trust and sharing of information. Because if they don't, it's all going to end in tears where somebody says something or they assume something and mixed messages go out. Mixed messages are like red meat to a lion.
Absolutely. Work together, work closely.
Ensure that everybody knows how to handle a media inquiry. This means all staff, because media will approach anybody, but most importantly, don't forget to tell your receptionist, the person who answers the phone. So often they're the last person to get told, they're the first person who should get told. Give them a few tools so you don't have to answer any questions. Just say, is this a media inquiry? Yes, then I'll put you through to the person who is our spokesperson or who is handling media inquiries. And that's where we say appoint a media coordinator, somebody to essentially triage the calls as they come in, decide whether they're important. Somebody who wants to go on talk radio immediately, live, gets higher attention than somebody who you can prepare a written statement for and get it to them in 5 hours' time. Next point.
So again, before it goes bad, agree on who you're talking to, who's going to be talking, and how it's all going to happen. Because again, you've got to stick to your plan. It's very easy to be divided and conquered because that's how people will view it. Whoever's talking, make sure that is the voice. But try and control, if possible, based upon the appropriateness of the medium. Face-to-face, a conference call. Try and avoid emails and SMS because that just causes confusion around your own within your own group because it's sometimes ambiguous. So face-to-face conference call is ideal. Keep it close.
Then agree on the spokesperson's preferred delivery method. Now, this is only so useful in the sense that your school head might prefer a written statement. In fact, many school heads do prefer written statements. But written statements aren't going to wash when the producer of Alan Jones' radio program rings up and says, we would like to speak to the principal. He's going to have to talk on the phone in a live interview situation, if he indeed agrees to the interview. So have a good idea, but don't hold to it like you're chained to it with a block of concrete, because if you do that, you will be seen as being evasive and hard to get along with. Brand protection is something that you can do and can be planning for very early on. And we'll talk a little bit more about brand protection later, but it does include an element of media monitoring. Media monitoring is incredibly important. Media monitoring now includes all social media. So you've got what's happening in the press, what's happening on TV, on radio, on the online news sources, and in the plethora of social media. Because if you're not listening, you can't hear the conversation.
This is sound practice even beyond. Hopefully you've never had a crisis, but the fact is, just in terms of informing your policies, your entire key messages, in listening to your public, seeing what's being said about you is a really sound way to go. So brand protection, media monitoring, it's the way to go.
Have a professional on standby. This is not a plug for MH7, but feel free to call us if you want to. No, but have a professional on standby. The thing here is not to go try and find a professional when you're in the midst of a crisis and you figure you need some help, and then that professional has to come up to speed very quickly about you, an organisation that they don't know anything about. Have somebody who is your media go-to person, who is experienced, and with a couple of hours they can be fully briefed, they can understand your school, they can understand your message and where you come from, so if the worst does happen, they can jump into the fray and assist really quickly. So the storm has arrived. The grey clouds are overhead and the thunder is happening. There's the flash of lightning, the first call from the media.
But thanks to having made that plan, it's not such a lonely place. First of all, decide, this is a crisis, work it out. As long as you realise it is, perfect. You're able to dust off that media plan of yours and invoke it. Assess the duration. Now what that means really is work this out. Is this just going to blow over in 24 hours, or is this going to run? Now, times to think about. First of all, don't ever think it's just going to blow over. Get on the front foot. Secondly, in the case of criminal cases, these can sometimes rumble on for 18 months, even longer. So work out, these things are fluid, but work out a plan as to how long this is going to last and the type of resource you're going to need to be involved. And call for help early. If you've identified help, give them a call. If you haven't, get onto it quick.
I've always found there's a picture of a red button there, and I've always found that it's good to think of it like that. There's a time when you push the red button, say, this is a crisis, it's starting. And as opposed to that, oh, just in a couple of hours, oh, it might get better, it might get better. No, call it a crisis. Treat it as one. It's going to be better for you. If it's not a crisis, in the end, that's fantastic. But at least you'll be prepared. What's worse is it was a crisis and you didn't call it that early enough.
Spot on. Now, we mentioned in our plan the spokesperson. Now is not the time to have egos fighting out who's the spokesperson, or even terrified spokespeople. Hopefully you agree, but if you haven't, make that decision, decide who's managing the process, and brief that spokesperson. They need to know they're the face of it all. So managing that process isn't the same as making all the decisions. We've mentioned you have a committee, whether that's the chairman, whether that's your principal, whether that's 2 people or whether that's half a dozen. That's your call, but make sure that it's clearly defined who's doing what within this, and be absolutely open with each other. Share the information. It's so important that there's a trust amongst you all, because you can't get the key messages, you can't get the right answers without having all the information in front of you, and then make sure that you all understand the issues. It doesn't matter if people aren't getting it. Share it, bounce it around, challenge each other, because you just need to know what's going on so you can craft the right responses. Now, this is so important. If you can't ask the hard questions around that table, as you're sweating profusely at the thought of where this could all lead, then believe me, it could get a lot worse. Because if you don't ask those questions amongst yourselves, the media are going to do it anyway. So to really challenge each other, ask the questions where this could go, worst case scenarios, all of those things. Make sure you establish that you know everything that's going on, everything that could go on, and importantly, ask the questions of those involved within the school. I think, Brad, you had an interesting one, didn't you, when the most simpler questions wasn't asked?
Yes, well, get to the school in question. Somebody had been accused of sexually interfering with a student, and clearly a very critical situation. And it took me about 15 minutes, and I suddenly realised nobody's actually talked to the person who is accused and got his side. I said, well, has somebody asked, did he do it? Oh, we couldn't ask that. That's, we would be right. We've got relationship with this
Wouldn't
teacher.
Want to cause offence.
No.
Well, that, right or wrong, that can drag the school's reputation completely through the gutter. So understand what the position is, because it may even affect a plea that you know will come up in time, or may come up in time, and that's the important information you need to know so you can make a decision about the messages you're going to put forward. So you've thrashed it out, you know what you want to say, you prepare these scripts, frequently asked questions, understand, stick to the script. Stick to the script. So you've worked out what you want to say, don't go off message, because that'll get you in all sorts of trouble. But throughout it all, he says, talking too quickly because I know I've got lots to say, stay calm, don't panic, don't panic. You've got stakeholders, you've got employees, keep calm. It's reassuring to them all. It may even help you as well, but just keep calm through it all, because appearing to be in control and being in control because you have a plan is worth so much And to be honest, if you can't keep calm, look yourself long in the mirror now. It's fine. It's not a sin. But just don't do this job. Don't be in charge of this particular element, because you need someone who in the storm, when Fairfax is calling you, News Limited is calling you, whatever it is, you need to be able to just take a deep breath and answer calmly. Don't, or whatever happens, don't become the story. And it has happened sometimes. We've even known, John Le Carre had an episode many years ago at Channel 7 when the media spokesperson ended up punching the photographer, and then suddenly, forget the story, the new story is this rumble, and you don't need that to damage your brand. You're probably in enough of a storm as it is. So as long as you've got a plan, stick to it, and then it will help you to stay calm.
Now, during the crisis, you've got to remember who your real audience is. Your audience isn't this amorphous mass of public opinion. Your real audience is your parents and families. In schools, they're your customers. They're the ones whose opinion really counts. Then, slightly further down the pyramid, if you like, is prospective parents. They are the people who are going to be making decisions about your school. And then there is the moral or legal owners. Many schools have denominational ties, and sometimes that's legal, so they are the owners. Sometimes it's just moral, so you've got the name of the denomination in the name of your school. That then gives them moral ownership, if you like. So they are your stakeholders. Then, at the bottom of the pyramid, the audience pyramid, is the public. So just remember who is important first. Try and get to parents and families, talk to them first. If you know a story is breaking, let them hear it from you before they hear it on the 6 o'clock TV news.
There's the word, the lawyer word. Yep, I know you're thinking dollars and cents, and it can cost you a bit, but be sure of where you stand. It's so important. Take that legal advice. Ideally, you'll have a lawyer. If you don't, line one up so you know who to call when the crisis hits. And prepare for quick action, because you may need to act very, very quickly, and that's not always the case with getting things approved through lawyers. Equally, fight for your message. What does that mean? It means lawyers may well stick to the letter of the law, and you've got to consider the audience we just described, and you need to communicate what's right to them. So at times, yes, we would even advise against the no comment line, which is often encouraged by lawyers. So have the courage of your convictions, take the right legal advice.
Now, lawyers work in a particular place. They work within the law. They work within the court of law. And there's rules there, really specific rules, which we call the law. As crisis media managers, you and we work in the court of public opinion. The rules are really not the same at all. As much as lawyers will like to think that they are the same, they are absolutely not the same. So expect a clash of ideas. Don't let it throw you. Don't let it put you off task. The balancing question does become, yes, how much of the lawyer's advice must we take because it is legally prudent, and how much of it is actually opinion. And it's not wrong. I've certainly done it before, sitting in a room or on the phone with lawyers, and I will say, tell me which bit is legal and which bit is just your opinion. And sometimes it throws them, but you get a good response.
It's fun arguing with the lawyers anyway. Now, whatever you're doing, release it quickly. Get it out there. So you've worked out your messages. Don't just sit on them. And I don't just mean blurt them out. You already have people contacting you from the media. Get on the front foot. Media, I'm talking generally, they hate a vacuum. You know what? You should as well, because if there's a vacuum of any knowledge or information, then the media are going to fill it. And you want to make sure they're filling it with correct information, the correct messages that you want to get out. Otherwise, heaven only knows what they'll put in there. And hours, think hours, not days, because it's a real treadmill down in media newsland, and people are churning it out all the time. So you've got to think quick and act quickly. In fact, I'd probably say even hours at times is not long enough. It's 15 minutes, something goes to press or something online.
Well, I had one last night. 20 minutes between first call and deadline.
Horribly true. But don't let that scare you, because it's just the way it is. It's the way it is. We're trying to prepare you for that. Importantly, though, let's use the situation. Keep your promises. If you say I'm going to get this release to you by 4 o'clock, do. And building that relationship with the journalist can be worth heaps. So keep your promises. And if you're going to be 10 minutes late, email. Pick up the phone, even better. Say, look, I'm really sorry. Give me 10 more minutes. I'm just finishing this. And that way you can enter into a dialogue, and it's worth a great deal in terms of dealing with whatever story is out there.
Now, when writing statements or speaking to the media, only say what you know to be true. It's very easy in those situations to feel comfortable filling in blanks and saying that things did happen that you don't actually know happened. You thought they happened because that's the procedure that always happens when children go on a school bus to an excursion, that they're counted on and they're counted off. Did you ask the teacher? Did they count the students back on the bus? If you don't know, don't say that that's what happened. Don't assume anything. It's be very specific. If you're forced into a place where you're assuming something, I'd suggest redrafting your statement so that you're very specifically not forced into a corner where you're assuming something. But on the other hand, be as transparent as possible. Spin doesn't actually really float a media boat as much as it once did back in the good old days when Scully was in Fleet Street and they used real ink on paper.
That was all done in bars, by the way.
And dinosaurs roamed the earth. But once upon a time you could put spin on things. Not so much. It's about being authentic. It's about being genuine. Be transparent. And avoid speculation wherever possible. Speculation on questions like a journalist will ask, well, what will you do if he is found guilty? Well, that hasn't happened yet, so don't speculate on that.
Now, but don't panic. The press do get things wrong at times.
No.
Yeah, it's official, and there is a path to go on this. It's okay to point out that they've made factual errors, and they often do. They often jump to conclusions. But when you do that, don't gloat. It's a good way to not get the retraction. Be firm and polite. Whether it's with the writer, the editor, and you can escalate it to the press council, who oversee responsible and credible editorial. It's about credibility for the newspaper or the media outlet, as well as your credibility. So it's really, really important. But just get on the phone and talk calmly about why they're wrong. And it's amazing. Yes, you can get a correction. I can't guarantee the front page where the original story was. It may well be 3 lines on page 17.
I'm glad you didn't guarantee that. Overall, be a human. Be a human first. You're not some sort of media brick wall that people have to get through or anything. It's about caring for the welfare of students and staff. That's always your first concern. And sometimes in the thick of it, it's easy to forget that. But that is your first concern. And say it often. Say it often in the statements that you're making, that this is the framework that you work within, that the care and welfare of your students is your utmost concern. Then back it up with actions. Don't just say it, do it. If it means getting counsellors in, if it means working with people to do extra things or support people, that's okay. Back it up with actions. And now, the never. This is the only never that we're going to say here. Never say no comment. Sometimes it's suggested to you. Don't say no comment. No comment is red rag to a bull in media land. It means that you've got something to hide. It means you're not being transparent. It means that I know, but I'm not going to tell you.
It's lawyer speak.
So try other lines, and you can work on your own. But I'm happy to try and answer that question once I've spoken to the right people. So I'm happy to give you that information, but I don't actually have it right now. I'll go and find out. Or all I can say is fill in the blank. But don't say no comment. No comment should not be in your vocabulary. After the media storm, it has passed. You've had 24 hours of clear air. Don't breathe too easy because they normally don't go away that easily. But after the media storm, we suggest a post-action review. And a post-action review is one of those things that they do in the army after a battle. But in short, it's saying sit down with all the key players and say, did our media plan perform as well as it should have? Was there any blanks that we discovered that we can now fill in? And what was our performance like as a team and as individuals? It can be brutally honest, and I've had people put up their hand before and say, I don't ever want to be the spokesperson again. I will do whatever I have to do not to be the spokesperson again.
More often than not.
So there we go. That's the quick romp through modern media management, or what to do when everything goes wrong. And that pretty much brings to a conclusion, Scully, but I think there's at least one question, although we are running very short on time.
Just a quick one. How do you know when to make the call, whether it's a long or a short-term story?
Wow, it's actually really quite deep, and it's just one of those things that you get a feeling for. But one of the things I do is I always look for where is the conflict. Every story has to have conflict. So who's beating up who, who's arguing with who. Now, sometimes that conflict is very easily resolved. That suggests it's going to be a short time frame. Other times the conflict is perhaps between, say, a staff member and the Crown, the legal system, in which case that could be a very long thing, as you suggested earlier. It just rolls on, and you'd have, it mightn't go for 2 years, but you have a peak when it's first announced, you have a peak when the person is charged, you have another peak when the court case starts, and then you'll have another peak after the sentence is handed down. So it is a hard question. You've got to go with your gut feel and what experience tells you. But on that sort of stuff, feel free, give us a call. No obligation in that, and we can have a quick word with you. And that pretty much brings us to the end. But I do want to very quickly bring to your attention some resources. So this webinar is being recorded right now, and that is going to be put onto our website so that you can download it. And sorry, producer Fiona is just telling us we've got another question. Is it better to engage in conversation on social media platforms or take the platforms offline? We've got pretty good views on this, and social media is a conversation. So if you are not prepared to engage in the conversation, only engage in those parts of social media where it's really one-way traffic. However, in the new sense, in crisis media management sense, it's really easy for social media responses to crises to go wrong. The landscape is littered with companies who have responded to crises on social media to crises, and it doesn't go well. Schools are in a very good position actually, because you usually know who all of your target audience is. You know the parents, you know their name, address, their phone number, their email addresses. You can talk to them directly. So that's one way. I hope, Scully, have you got any other take on that one?
Well, just be conscious you don't always control the medium. That's the key thing with social media, and I'll guarantee you will have other ways of communicating with your existing stakeholders. So be careful, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And there are companies, Qantas, all the rest, have got dozens of people who do nothing but measure, monitor what's going on social media, anything to do with their name, and you know, no school could hope to have the resources to monitor it constantly. Back to some brand protection on that, something else I mentioned earlier, but at the end of the day, I guess steer clear if you possibly can. Okay, so back to our resources. Thank you for those questions. The webinar recording will be up within a couple of days for you to download and share or watch.
Brand Protection Program is a program that we've got that involves media monitoring and actually being there to help you avert the risk of crisis media. You can actually request a consultation around that. So, Scully, any quick thoughts on that one before we move on?
No, not at all. I just urge you, please feel free to contact us on image7.com.au/webinar resources, and we'll either get back to you personally or we'll try and address whatever issue you do have. Also on the resources page, you can sign up to receive our weekly school marketing newsletter and subscribe to our fortnightly podcast. That's the SMC School Marketing e-newsletter and podcast, and more webinars. In fact, the next one is?
The next one is November the 12th, 1 p.m. Australian Eastern, and by that time it will be daylight saving, but it will be inbound marketing and introduction, and specifically from the point of schools. So that will be a good one on the 12th of November.
So thank you very much again, and just one last reminder, the resources page is www.image7.com.au/webinar resources. Thank you. Goodbye.